You have questions? We have answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box with your host, Miss Lindsay Schiss.
Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box, where we are not afraid of your toughest questions. So ask away. Today, I have with me Kathy Kinghorn, partner and therapist at Therapy Utah. And Kathy, first of all, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here.
Tell me, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was a bit unique. I went down to Tijuana with my husband and we helped build houses and I presented down there with a translator, which is always a little tricky. But they were just so gracious. And one of the families we helped was literally living under a tarp, and for watching them get this house, I don't think there was a dry eye. It was fantastic. So yeah, it was good. It was good.
Wow, your Thanksgiving was way cooler than mine then. If you're going down to Tijuana building houses, that's so cool. That's something that your husband's done quite a while, like many times. Is that right?
Yes, this is only my second time. So I
Okay.
was not as brave. And then I finally got brave enough to do it. And I see why he kept going back. You do it and you're just hooked, kind of, it's just, it's, you think, it looks like, wow, we really blessed lives. And I know I did, and the team of 80, we go with 80 did, but I'm telling you, it's a, for you, it benefits your maturity, your growth, your connection to what's really important, just grounds you in all of that. So it's really a singular experience.
Oh, that's awesome. I have had that same experience, and it's a changing experience, I think. And it's hard to understand, at least for me, until I had done it myself. So sounds like it was amazing. I'm glad to hear it was a good one. The rest of us ate turkey and stuffing and gravy and still had a good time, So anyways, I'm glad it was great. Well, we'll jump right into our listener's question. This question was really good and so interesting, about navigating challenges silently. And so I'll go ahead and read it, and then we will just dive right in. Here we go. I'm facing a deeply personal challenge that I don't feel comfortable sharing, but it's really affecting my ability to function and do the things I usually do. How can I navigate this and start finding my way back to a sense of normalcy?
Oh, wow. What a great question. I think in all of our lives, Linz, we have what I call unspoken firsts. I'm actually thinking of a few examples that I've heard of an unspoken first. The school calls and they say that your child has bullied another child. Who do you share that with? You get a biopsy, or a mammogram, and routine, and yet they say, hey, we need to do a biopsy. We found something. Who do you share that with? Do you share it with family? Do you worry them? What's the concerns of not sharing and sharing and all of that? Maybe your first time involved in a layoff that was completely unexpected. It was your first time to be involved in it. Maybe you ran across a text conversation that your partner had on their phone. It felt a little too friendly, and when you asked them about it, they got really defensive. Those are what sometimes I just call, they're unspoken, but it's the first time that you're living this experience. And the reason they're unspoken is all of a sudden you're not quite sure who's safe with your story. And so
that's such a good reminder, is, these unspoken firsts. As you were saying that, it really made me reflect, like, oh, this maybe isn't some huge secret that feels like it's, a betrayal or something. That's what came to my mind when I first heard this question. But I love that you brought it back to the everyday things in our lives that we're going, oh, wait a minute, I don't know who's safe. I don't know who to share this with. This feels really, really heavy and feels scary in some ways, right? And as you're saying that, I think, boy, that normalizes it for every one of us. Every one of us have had those unspoken first happen in our lives.
Yeah.
So again, so as you think about that, and again, not knowing what this listener's unspoken first is, what advice would you give this person who feels torn between keeping their challenge private and reaching out for help? Because that's the first thing you said. Who is safe? I don't know who's safe. Where would you start?
Well, first of all, I think to recognize that, again, we've all had them to varying degrees in various situations. And so this confusion about who do I speak to and who do I not speak to is really a part of the human experience. So the fact that you're trying to be purposeful about who knows this part of your story, it's a beautiful question. This person is going, I want to be purposeful about this part of my story. And I've never maybe had to experience this in this way. But the important thing is to know that if it is your first time experiencing this, it's new, right?
Mm.
And so when things are new, we just make mistakes. Maybe we had somebody that's absolutely safe. Absolutely. I mean, they're your best friend. And if you shared something with them, they've supported you and you know it. But in this situation, you go, I don't know. I can't even share it yet with this dear friend that I know has a history of holding it for me.
Mm. As you're saying that, I think, a fear that could be coming up is, I have had these dear friends, but it may be, I don't know that I trust myself. I don't know that I trust myself to not overshare or to not, there's somebody else involved in this situation. And I also have loyalty towards them. So it may be the person that we're worried about sharing it with, but it may be ourselves that we have some discomfort around how we're going to show up when it comes to sharing these uncomfortable situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yet you have to kind of check your belief system. It's like, okay, my friend is dealing with a mother who's just diagnosed with Alzheimer's. The fact that the school called and I found out my child was a bully just doesn't seem to stack up in pain and suffering. So we start having all these beliefs that come in that can put a real wall there where it doesn't need to have happen. So it's good to just check and even write down what's the stories I'm telling myself that say don't share.
Mm,
What are those stories? And you'll find in those stories some that you go, I like, let's say you did get a mammogram and they want a follow-up biopsy and your daughter's 8 months pregnant and you think, you know what, this can wait. This can wait. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to have the biopsy and I'll share when the results come, and that works for me. That lines up with me and the situation. So you're just trying to kind of guess your way through it.
yes, that makes a lot of sense. You're trying to guess your way through it. And when you said the story that I'm telling myself around it, I think that's so important to understand. Like, what is the narrative in my own brain that's going on around this story, right? What is it that's coming up for me? You know, as you're talking about like that we would eventually share. Is there ever a time where you think, you know what, there are some struggles where I just don't feel like sharing? What is your professional perspective on that? Like, not sharing and just keeping it to ourselves, is that problematic? Is it sometimes helpful and justified? Give me your thoughts on that.
It's really, I think, situational because some of us by nature are just more private.
Mhm.
And we don't even think, nobody's taught us, that it's okay to share tough things. Maybe we've been modeled that that's a negative. You just bootstrap it up and move forward. So if you look at that type of belief, you go, do I want to hold that belief?
Mm.
Can I start building trust with people and sharing? So it kind of depends on the situation, but I think we need at some point a relationship where somebody's allowed to witness all of us in
Mm.
all of our messiness, in all of us. We all need that person.
I think one of the values of therapy is often that is who a therapist is that
Yeah.
person who can witness all of us and that is that objective party that isn't involved, right, in these clients' lives. They're just an objective party that is trying to help this person. And as you're saying that, I think, what if you don't have that person in your life? What if you don't have a person that can do that for you? My first thought is that's what therapists do, right? We
Yeah.
help we
Yeah.
help reflect back to people what is going on in their life. So it's interesting. What is your take on that in terms of what if I don't have a supportive person in my life, right? Therapy is an option, but do then I need to look and do some work around that? Like, oh man, maybe I need to consider how I open up to people. How safe, do I allow people to open up to me? Am I a person that people trust? Like, do we need to start doing some work around that?
I think we do, Lindsay. I think it's that fear of what will happen. If
Mm.
I share this, will they look at me differently? Maybe I've always been the strong one in the group, and what if that is taken from me and I don't get that label anymore and I'm not the strong one? And if you can unpackage that and go, you know what? I can accept that. I don't need to be the strong one. How crazy that I thought that I
Mm.
needed to be the strong one. My belief is I don't need to be the strong one all the time. I can be carried some of the time. So when you start looking at where the fear's coming from, sometimes you can kind of naturally go, oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. It will feel risky. It's going to feel risky to tell this person, but I'm okay taking that label off for a time and letting somebody else hold and be strong for me and with me.
And as you say that, it makes me think that our biggest need as humans is connection, right? Connecting with other people. And sometimes that vulnerability feels so scary to really go ahead and share that. But when we are willing to do that, I really believe that is where we find some of our deepest connecting relationships, is when we allow ourselves to like venture out onto that cliff where it feels so scary that, oh, how is this going to be held? And how are they going to think of me? And I don't know what this is going to feel like, but we do it. And when it is held in safety, it does deepen that connection, not just from the perspective of what's going on at the time, the secret that they're wanting to share or that unspoken first, but it also just deepens that relationship.
And it absolutely does. And it works even if it doesn't, Lindsay. So let's say that let's say you share with somebody and their reaction isn't helpful for you. Maybe they're a real fixer. Maybe they just go into panic mode. Maybe there's judgment all over the place. And you come out the other side of it and you can go, wow, I survived that. I
Mm.
that this was new. Well, actually, on a funny note, I had an experience in my life where I shared with the wrong person. If it's okay, I'll just share this
Sure.
experience I had. I was going through one of the biggest challenges of my life. I hadn't really eaten since I'd found out. I hadn't slept. I was just destroyed emotionally. I was struggling uh, with it, and about 4 or 5 days into this situation, of course, when one thing collapses, it seems like our whole world. And I had a big plumbing issue, and I'm a very private person. I have two dear friends, and that about wraps up my social. They're enough for me. I'm just pretty introverted and private, and so but I had to call a plumber and get this situation under control. And this nice older man came and he went downstairs and I, showed him what the issue was. And he just casually kind of said, "How's your day?" And Lindsay, I'm not kidding you. I sat on a 5-gallon bucket and I went into every detail about what was happening in my life. I mean, it was overshared to the nuclear level. I was sobbing. I was telling him every detail. If there's a plumber here listening, that was me,
Right.
And
So those two friends all of a sudden wasn't enough. You needed the third plumber. You needed that friend as a plumber, right?
Yeah. And I can tell you that was the fastest plumbing job I think he's ever done. And as I'm doing it, there's a part of me going, wow, you need to stop. This is sounding pretty crazy. But oh no, there was no stop. There was no stop. He quickly gave me the bill. I think he really discounted it because he knew he was dealing with a lunatic. And he moved on. And I don't believe we've ever met again. Again, if he's by chance listening to this, my apologies. But you
Right.
know what? It was just one of those moments that as I was able to much later, laugh about it and look at that situation. Yeah, was it a mistake? For sure. For sure. Oh, well. Oh,
Mm,
well. You
mm,
know, if we are going to make mistakes, and especially in this situation, we're going to share with somebody that in hindsight, the timing was off of the sharing, or the detailed content was off. Oh, well, that happens. If they are somebody that's going to be good in your life and shore you up, that can be overcome. That can be overcome.
mm.
But if what bears out is they're not able to hold it, they're not able to keep your confidence, they're not able to see you and simply witness, it's information for you. That's all it is. It's like, okay, next time I'll try. I've learned and I'm gonna use that wisdom for next time.
That helps us, I believe, to actually have more confidence that, if it's not the right person, if we do, succumb to telling the plumber everything, that we recognize like it's okay. We learn, it's information, and we can use it to go forward. And so the stakes feel a little less high as you're talking through that, because I think, well, it could be the wrong person and it may be, but that's again information that I can go, okay, now I know and I can move forward. Doesn't mean it's not painful. Doesn't mean you weren't embarrassed. I'm sure you were embarrassed. I'm sure there was some shame around like, oh my gosh, wow, where did that come from? And apparently I needed the plumber not just to do my plumbing, but as my therapist, right? But to go, okay, we just learn, we live and learn, and it's okay. So as you're saying that, one thing our listener asked, she said, it's affecting my ability to function and do the things I usually enjoy. I would say many people who have had these unspoken firsts are in that same camp, right? You said, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. And so that really impacts your ability to just function, let alone enjoy things. And so what advice would you give our listener for how can they get back to a sense of normalcy?
Well, the first thing would be, even though you have so little energy, you're probably going to have to shift up how you start conversations. So what I mean by that is you're going to have to teach the person you're talking to what you need. You're
Mm,
going to have to say things like, I have something to share, and all I can do is share it. I can't get any feedback right now. I can't hear any advice. I can't have you get upset at the other person for me. If that's the situation, all I can do is share it. And when I'm done, I feel like I just need to sit until I can move. And so you have to teach them what you need. And that's so powerful. If they're a person that can hold it for you, they're going to appreciate that guidance. They're going to listen to it and go, okay, what they need is just me to sit here and breathe with them. I can do that. That's the only thing they've asked for. That's the only thing that I'm going to give back then.
Gosh, I wonder how many of us even know what we need. Like, how do we even know what we need? How do I know that I am like, I don't need feedback. I just need someone to sit and breathe with me. How do
Yeah.
you know that?
You know what? It's just a guess because you might get done and feel so relieved at the end that then you say, I think I think I could use some encouragement right now, actually. And so you're
Mm,
kind of guessing your way through it, but until you have that felt experience with that other person, your system's not going to be able to know, do I stay on alert or can I just take the edge off a little bit and relax into this moment?
mm.
So it can change moment to moment as you're sharing with somebody.
Mm. It's interesting because as you say that, I think, oh man, that requires vulnerability in and of itself to say,
Mhm,
this is what I need. This is what would feel helpful right now. And you're guessing. In fact, you're not even sure of it, but you're just trying to navigate in real time. And
mhm,
I mean, as we're having this conversation, what keeps coming up for me is this is such an exercise in vulnerability and trust. Trust in somebody else, trust in yourself, trust in having these hard conversations and being able to recover from them. Trust that these unspoken first, that with seeking support, we will get through them. But I just think, wow, there's so much trust that comes in when we're talking about personal challenges that feel uncomfortable when we share.
mhm. Yeah, there is. And so if you're the person receiving that gift, receiving that much trust,
Mm,
sometimes we can overlook it when we're on the receiving end. We can think, oh, of course she's sharing. She's my friend. But for a lot of reasons, this particular share might hit some real wounds that make it even more difficult to share. So don't take the trust lightly if you're the person that is being shared with.
mm. Do not take it lightly because it requires a lot of courage and vulnerability, right? So when we're talking about a sense of normalcy, what does that look like for you? Is there anything that you could just small tips that might help our listener just get back to some sense of normal?
Well, one is that you're genuinely not going to have the energy to do everything that was on your plate. And so you can say things like, I would really love to volunteer this week to read a story at my kid's school, but I can't. Please ask me again. Ask me again in 3 months, but I can't do it now. And that can be absolutely true. You love to do that. It's your thing. You love going for that 30 minutes and reading them a book and seeing their cute faces, and it lifts you up, and it's so great. But during this particular time, what's true for you is yes, I still want to do that, but I cannot put it on my agenda today. So give yourself that grace that it's not forever. It's not forever. Energy comes back. And so allow yourself to say, thank you for the offer. I appreciate that you thought of me. I just can't this week or
Mm.
this month, you know?
I love that it's okay to not be okay and to give ourselves some grace. Like as you were talking, I thought this is where self-compassion is so important that we can say, you know what, this is a time and it's okay to not be at my highest and best functioning self. I've had some hard things going on. They feel very personal, they feel very private, and it's okay. I don't need to show up all the time at 100%. In fact, none of us do. So, welcome to the club, but giving yourself grace. I love that. Kathy, is there anything else that you feel like is important that our listener hears and that our other listeners know about these unspoken first, or again, a deeply personal challenge that feels uncomfortable sharing?
I think I would say that it's a great question, Lindsay. You're not, try not to put yourself in the right, wrong category. If you're going through something that's this big that you're trying to figure out who you can trust. You can feel like, oh, great, I'm even doing this wrong. I didn't share quick enough and my friend's feelings are hurt. I'm messing this up. Give yourself grace. Like you said, Lindsay, it's that self-compassion that goes there. How could you possibly know the exact path forward? Of course, mistakes will be made and wins will be happening, but don't try to put yourself in a box of I did this right or I did this wrong.
Mm.
You're just doing it. You're living it in the moment.
Excellent. That we're just doing our best. We're navigating it in real time, right? So a couple of those nuggets, Kathy, that I just want to recall for our listeners. The first is really get clear about what our beliefs are. What is it what's the story I'm telling myself? Instead of this is what's going on, what's the narrative in my brain, right? And the beliefs that we have about ourselves, and then really asking, do I want to hold that belief? Is that something I want to continue to have, right? The second thing was speak your needs. As you talked about that, I thought, oh man, that one feels really hard. This is what I need. And that we may not know, and we're actually just guessing. But as you were talking about that, I thought that actually feels really compassionate to self and to the people that we're talking with, that we're sharing with, that we're saying, this is what we think we need. We may not, we'll see how it goes, but that we're all exhibiting a lot of compassion for self and the person we're sharing with. And the last thing I thought was so important was grace. Let's not put yourself as right or wrong, or how are we doing this, or what's the right or wrong way to be doing it, but just to give yourself grace in that process and to recognize that this is a tender time and that we won't always be in the spot. But right now we can allow ourselves to do a little less, to show up, maybe not at 100%, for sure not at 100%, and be okay with that. It is so important to recognize that we all have challenges that feel too personal to share. They feel painful to share. And the recognition that you are not alone in this, that this is something we've all experienced unspoken first. And they may feel, small, and they may be huge. And guess what? It doesn't really matter, because to you, they are tender, they are private, and they feel big. And so we want to just recognize that this is an experience many, many people have. And we hope that this podcast was helpful and that can provide a couple of nuggets for our listeners, and this listener in particular, to manage and navigate these challenges that we all have and that we will continue to have. Kathy, thanks so much for your expertise and for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.